Hello everyone, it's Bavar from PTC or Port Terra Conglomerate here. We're here with our latest video to give you an overview of, arguably, the pound for pound hardest hitting anti-subcap and capital ship, the Aegis Eclipse. Throughout this video we will cover the ship's lore, her overall features and specifications, special features, her layout, such as it is, her flight profile, and recommended tactics, and, as is tradition, we will also cover how we at PTC like to use the ship as well as what we feel is a real-world vehicular equivalent. The Eclipse, a stealth bomber developed by Aegis Dynamics, has a long and complex history that stretches back several centuries. Aegis, once the Empire's primary ship manufacturer during the Mesa regime, found itself tainted and ostracized in the industry due to its historical association. As military contracts increasingly went to rival companies such as Anvil and RSI, Aegis struggled to survive. In order to do so, it had to focus on maintaining and updating its existing ship designs. However, things decided to change about 130 years later, in the August of 2918. A Vandal fleet anchorage was thought to have been discovered by a long-range surveillance asset. The key to its discovery was studying Vandal raid patterns and identifying a potential center point thought to be supporting them. Additional assets were allocated to this effort, providing rough scans of what was thought to be the anchorage and revealing a possible network of sensor drones. Knowing about the facility was one thing, but taking action without compromising the existence of the Navy's new long-range reconnaissance assets was quite the challenge. A traditional strike would have allowed for ample time for reinforcements to arrive or for the facility to be evacuated, thereby requiring a new approach. Thus, the decision was made to develop a custom stealth bomber known as Project Eclipse. This bomber would bypass enemy defenses and deliver its payload while avoiding or circumventing the sensor net. The conventional fleet would follow to deliver the final blow or board the facility if the situation permitted. In order to maintain secrecy, the project was shrouded in complete confidentiality, with only the builders and the naval personnel involved in the base assault being aware of its existence. Aegis, with their tarnished reputation and being out of favour with the UEN proper, was chosen over Anvil to avoid drawing attention. The project was then also named Project Eclipse in an attempt to divert attention towards RSI due to the naming conventions. The Eclipse team worked from an underground bunker outfitted by a naval construction unit, thereby hopefully ensuring secrecy during the design and construction phases. Despite the tight schedule, Project Eclipse went from concept to 48 fully operational craft in just 9 months, the first prototype flying after 4 months and the design being finalised at 7. Due to the significant capabilities required of the craft and the extremely short time frame, the cost of Project Eclipse was substantial. The 48 Eclipses equaled the cost of refitting an equal number of Javelins. Although the project couldn't be officially acknowledged, the positive impact on Aegis's finances swiftly became very evident. The success of the Eclipse and Aegis's efforts led to the subsequent eventual commissioning of the Sabre, though that project was not successful in its competition. On July 14, 2920, 4 Eclipse squadrons rendezvoused with a UEN battle group in order to prepare for the strike. However, their target turned out to be a goddamn rock, disproving the analyst's analysis and surveillance assets capabilities, or at least casting a significant amount of shade on them. This tactical mistake cost the UEN billions, now leaving them with a bomber without a mission. Of course, naturally, rather than admitting their error, the military decided to continue developing the Eclipse in top secrecy, anticipating future potential missions. Over the next 15 years, Aegis's underground facilities produced more Eclipse bombers, which were then used for select strike missions or operations, eliminating Vandal targets and several criminal organizations. Whilst the Eclipse remained a closely guarded secret, some of its technology and advancements did influence other UEEN projects and platforms. By 2945, rumour about a top-secret military bomber used for illegal strikes began to circulate. In late 2946, images and videos of the Eclipse taking off from a naval base were leaked, confirming its existence. Facing a public relations storm and conspiracy nutters going ham, the military revealed the ship's design and history, and announced its availability to qualified militias on the frontier in need of strike craft. Aegis repositioned the Eclipse and dialed it in for the civilian market, enabling smaller, trusted frontier forces to strike back against raiders and the Vandal, without relying solely on the overtaxed and spread-thin navy. The demand for Eclipses was high, prompting Aegis to increase production in order to meet the new demand. Within a mere 3 decades, the Eclipse had not only turned around Aegis's fortunes, but had also set the company on a new trajectory. Its impact was substantial, re-solidifying Aegis's position as a premier spacecraft manufacturer and establishing the Eclipse as a notable ship in the verse. In terms of her specifications, you'll find she has a length of 20.5 meters, a width of 36.5, a height of 4.4, a combat speed of 146, and a max speed of 981. In terms of her actual components themselves, she's got a single size 1 radar, a single size 1 small computer, a single size 1 power plant, 2 size 1 coolers, and 2 size 1 shields. In terms of her weaponry, you'll find she comes with stock dual fixed size 2 guns, and of course 3 size 9 torpedoes in the hold. Interestingly enough, whilst her hydrogen is a little bit anemic at about 90,000 litres, she does come with over 1100 litres of QT fuel, which ain't half bad. In terms of her special features, surprising no one, she features a extremely small cross-section, with the arrowhead design of the ship being aimed to not quite eliminate but significantly reduce its cross-section, with the weapons and torpedoes naturally being stored internally until they're ready for use. And whilst not quite enabled yet, the wings do have multiple modes, or will have them, being aimed at spaceflight and atmospheric flight. Now, in terms of the layout, this will be a bit of a whistle-stop tour because there's pretty much the cockpit and that's about it. She is fairly wide once you're seated in it, with a spray of buttons up above you and down below. In terms of her flight profile, I did have to consult one of the members of the org who specialises in the old girl. And to quote, "She's not agile, and she feels very deliberate when you're flying her, almost to the point of feeling like a heavy fighter, but without the acceleration or the boost stamina. This, combined with her relatively low max speed of 981 ms, means that she can be quite punishing to fly without careful consideration of the situation, your attack run's approach, execution, and subsequent exit. The recommended tactics for the Eclipse largely depend on her role that she's being employed in, though knowing her passive and active detection distances is always useful at around 4-ish kilometers and 8-ish kilometers. When using the Eclipse as a strike craft, planning and the ability to judge risk levels are required. Additionally, key aspects to a successful run are favourable environments reducing the target's speed and ability to manoeuvre, such as thick atmosphere, dense asteroid fields, etc. You catch the drift. A clear approach path minimising torpedo traversal, i.e. its need to turn to stay on course for the target. Bonus points if the target is completely unsuspecting and has no idea you're there. And a keen sense of timing for when to make your approach and for when to fire your torpedo to minimise the chance of it being decoyed away or intercepted. Additionally, it doesn't hurt if your target is either distracted or is undercrewed, reducing the amount of turrets that can be scanning for you and your approach, as well as a lack of screening elements like light and medium fighters. And of course, the proverbial cherry on top that allows you to get the hell out of there, a clear exit vector. It's not unusual for pilots executing these missions to strip guns and sometimes even shields to drop their signature as much as possible. After all, a detected eclipse can very swiftly become a dead one if there's any light fighters screening your target. This is why it's not uncommon for eclipses to also attack in groups or with distracting support craft, especially those that are able to harass with missiles due to the torpedoes not being differentiated as an incoming munition. A supporting quote from a PTC Eclipse pilot on the importance of hunting in a pack and support elements. If you don't break that fighter contact, you're dead. You can't outrun them and you can't outturn them. If you're up against light fighters that know you're there and are ready for you, and are of course actually half decent, your odds of surviving a run plummet. You might get your ordnance off, but you probably won't survive. And when it comes to employing the Eclipse as a scout, a quote from the same org member does come to mind. If you want eyes in the sky, get yourself a hole in the sky. You can watch from nearby and not have to be in the actual combat because you're not being seen. You've also got that size 9 ace in the hole if anything big turns up. Some key elements for being an effective scout are knowing your detection distances, both active and passive, keeping a good sense of situational awareness to know if you need to shift position to avoid detection, having the restraint and self-discipline to be a proverbial hole in the sky, shields off, weapons off, and only move if you absolutely need to, and rely on passive scanning unless the environment is hot, i.e. would another target lock stand out versus the proverbial what the hell just locked me. I will emphasize, being able to exercise restraint is key. You should only really be engaging targets when deemed appropriate to the operation and if the specific circumstances call for it. Just because there's a target doesn't mean you should necessarily be engaging it, both because it would give away your existence and because it would be a bit of a waste due to the cost of the torpedoes. Sometimes, keeping your finger off the trigger can have more of a beneficial effect to the success of your operation versus the quick kill. You're also better able to relay important information to the rest of your team if you're not in the heat of active combat or desperately scrabbling for survival. As for her claim times, you'll find she has a claim time of 19.5 minutes, at least as of 3.18.2, an expedite time of about 6 minutes, and a fee of about 19,000. While officially the Eclipse was inspired by the B2, PTC considers the F-117 as the Eclipse's real-world equivalent. Both craft act primarily as strike craft with a heavy emphasis placed on stealth as their primary method of avoiding detection during strikes and defense. Additionally, such a premium was placed on their stealth that it came at the cost of their agility, top speeds, and payload flexibility. To this effect, neither can actually carry anti-fighter missiles, with the Eclipse only carrying what I would charitably describe as a token gun-based armament. As an amusing parallel between the two craft, both have surprisingly roomy cockpits, all things considered. And as a final remark in terms of their equivalency, both craft are hyper-specialized, expensive to operate, and were inordinately costly to develop. Needless to say, both required skilled operators to get the most out of them. In conclusion, the Aegis Eclipse is pound for pound one of the most lethal craft in the game when employed correctly, with quite an interesting origin story. All in all, not half bad for a ship whose raison d'etre turned out to be a rock. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, please feel free to leave a like or subscribe if you want to see more of this sort of thing. However, I will ask 2 questions before I toddle off. Do you have any stories of your own about the Eclipse or the other torpedo bombers in the game? Which is your favourite, and why? This is Bavar from PTC, signing off.